Dr. Rajkumar and I agree on many things. In fact, I think there's more common ground that there would appear to be at first glance. However, we have some fundamental disagreements. I sort of glanced through this quickly in my presentation, but he and I agree that there needs to be healthy competition when it comes down to generics. And in fact, there needs to be a quick transition of patented medications to generics. And ideally, generic medications should be inexpensive. That's not always the case. Until recently, the backlog of approvals for drugs by the FDA for generics had a very long queue, as long as 4,000 medications. From the promises and the actions of the new commissioner, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, we have seen a very significant improvement. Nevertheless, I'm still told that the competitive nature of generic markets in the United States is quite unique. So overall, generics have to be inexpensive. What we're talking about here is how do we protect intellectual property in such a way that rewards innovation and remains of value to patients and to quote unquote society at large. I think he and I agree that patients must have access to this life-saving drug. So we cannot put patients in the middle. We cannot engage in strategies that would somehow make it harder for patients to get drugs. And I've written about this. I'm particularly concerned about interference with copay assistance for Medicare beneficiaries, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I mean, he and I, and it's self-evident, obviously the myeloma survival has improved dramatically, but we are not there. We still must do better, and we still need to find better solutions for the problem. And also, there is no free market in medicine. And what I mean by that is the market forces are not what you would normally see just with a truly competitive free market. Now, what I always like to say is that you don't make the failures of the free market better by making it less free. In fact, quite the opposite. He would argue that some of the things that we can do would have some form of a temporizing nature, but I think long term what we need to do is to try to, as much as possible, align medical purchasing and medical services with free market principles. And we have some, but it's not completely what one would consider the free market. Now, I'm going to show, and I'll show that with data, that drug prices are not rising faster than anything else in healthcare. In fact, that's a misconception, and that's something that we hear often from the lay press. I'm going to show as well that patients afford these medications and patients can get these medications. And I'm going to talk about what happens in the real world, not what could happen. I'm going to make the case that these drugs provide value. And also, I'm not certain that unless we have something that's very, very clear, then quote unquote something must be done. We are living in the golden age of drug development for multiple myeloma. We have seen unprecedented improvements in our ability to treat the disease. Finishing fellowship, if you were to do myeloma, you were kind of the last in line. No one wanted to do myeloma. And why? Well, we just had melphalan and prednisone. We didn't have much to offer. And we have seen, obviously, a total of 11 new drugs approved by the FDA since the late 1990s. But again, we are not there yet.